And this API is interesting because I used a little bit of arbitraging, back in the Wall Street days. So I think it's fascinating, this concept. And just so people don't know, there's a futures contract that's traded maybe on the Singapore exchange versus the Chicago exchange, or maybe a treasury bond versus a swap versus a series of futures contracts. And, a lot of people in the market, not everyone, try to arbitrage those. And by doing so, it brings the price to be the same in each marketplace. I guess you guys kind of want to facilitate that, which will facilitate volume as well. And if immutable is the backbone of that, you can just start seeing a lot more volume, a lot more maybe price discovery on some of these NFT assets where it might have been zero.
Precisely. In fact, there's no need to even arbitrage if two marketplaces are supported by immutable, because they're sharing the same orders, which means that someone can purchase here and have it be sold here. And this is the really powerful thing, rather than having all these inefficiencies in the market, which is what arbitrage is designed to solve. Those efficiencies are, solved from day one. The liquidity is everywhere. A buyer can connect to a seller everywhere. And that's what's really important.
Let's talk about Meta. Is this something we need to be concerned about? Obviously, the rebrand itself was probably the best piece of PR for your business globally, because people have said, what's the new name? What's this new word? But what are the things we need to look out for as this closed metaverse is potentially owned by Facebook/Meta?
Yeah, so look, the best explanation of why they rebranded comes from Peter Thiel, which is, in his classic seminal Startup Tech 0-1, talks about how smaller companies want to appear like they dominate a smaller market share, like they're the biggest fish in a small pond. Bigger companies, and that's to show like dominance of market share and growth. Bigger companies want to say, hey, I'm just a tiny fish in a very, very big market. So Google is not 99.5% of search. It's a tiny fraction of the internet, or a tiny fraction of information that people access. And Facebook, really, the reason they rebranded to Meta, a strong motivating reason, is instead of Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, like things that really, I don't know if they should have been able to execute as M&As. It's, hey, we're Meta, we're this decentralized company around the future. It's this giant world around individuation and self-actualization in digital environments. And these are just tiny pieces of that. And so that's ingenious. And kudos to them. Even though people laughed at the transition, they got what they wanted, which is, I think they have positioned themselves to get more life and lifespan and longevity on a series of extremely strong power in different verticals in sort of social media. And in terms of do we need to be worried, 100%. I mean, and I have nothing in particular against the leadership, say, of Meta, but it's really this divide between Web 2 and Web 3. We don't want a company whose incentives are wrong to own the infrastructure of the future world, because they can, with impunity, say, well, hey, the set of physics, the set of rights that I told you were real are wrong. What matters is that people own this stuff, that it's decentralized, that it runs on a blockchain like Ethereum. Because what we're really saying is, how should the digital property rights that will run trillions of dollars of value over the next centuries of the world be decided? Because what's decided here will continue for a very, very long time because of the network effects of that platform.
Yeah, I mean, when Yatsu was here, he said it's the most important fight of our lives, maybe of humanity, is keeping this metaverse open. Because when it's closed, so many things are happening with your brains that, how do you turn that around? I've had guests here that have said they did the newsfeed study where they altered your newsfeed on Facebook by a slight bit and they can make you more angry or more depressed, let alone the metaverse VR feed. It's a little scary, like you said, for that to be closed and maybe not irreversible. Do you think it is the most important fight in humanity, is to keep the metaverse open?
100%. Just like the internet not being Microsoft Services Network and instead being the internet was incredibly important. And to the credit of Microsoft leadership today, I think if you asked, hey, do you wish MSN had won? They would say no, because the sheer amount of financial value that was opened up by having an open ecosystem is insane. And having a small chunk of that is far more valuable than owning, a centralized server that some people can interact with and where there's no composability and no ability for third parties to contribute to that ecosystem. You could not have achieved a fraction of what humanity has achieved today without the internet. And I think the really important thing, and why Yad is exactly right, is this is a fight. It's not just an equilibrium that trends towards openness. In fact, moments in technology progression in human history are often decided by very, very small arbitrary things. In fact, when email was first invented, there was a proposal to attach a fee to every single email that was sent. The HTTP protocol, which has been around forever, was actually, there was an incredible amount of effort that went into that, making it so efficient and so long lasting. And so these small technical choices have huge impacts upon the interoperability and way people can build these businesses in the future. We absolutely must ensure it's open. We absolutely must ensure it's decentralized. We absolutely must ensure that people have access to self-custody, even if they don't always want to use it, and that they can always take control of their keys. Lest we end up with the situations we've seen of the world with people being financially deplatformed at a whim. And sometimes it seems convenient because you agree with the philosophy of the government deplatforming people. I think it's an incredibly dangerous precedent to set, because we're saying that if the whims of a government change, if the tides of a political sentiment move, you can be standing on the opposite end and suddenly everything you've worked for is gone. I think that's very, very scary. I think we need to move to a future that is less fragile, where people can independently protect their assets, and that is connected instead by the right economic incentives. And again, not to speak as if I have any authority deeply on the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, but ultimately global peace is an incentives problem. You have to economically tie everyone's interests together. And that is fundamentally what Web3 solves, is how do you coordinate things at scale in a way that is 100 times better than it's ever been seen before.